Do you know who my father is?
Brittany Caldwell snapped her fingers at the black waitress, like calling a dog.
This soup is cold. Taste it.
Grace Sullivan kept steady.
I can bring a fresh one, right?
I said taste it. On your knees. Like the help you are.
Grace didn't move.
No.
Brittany stood slowly.
Let me warm you up then.
She lifted the bowl and poured it over Grace's head. Hot bisque streamed down her face, her neck, burning through her uniform into her skin.
My father runs this city. Who's gonna stop me?
No one moved. Every phone just recorded. But that night, Grace's mother made one phone call. Just one. And the name Caldwell would never carry power in this town again. 3 hours before that bowl of soup changed everything, Grace Sullivan was ironing her uniform in the kitchen of a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Ashford, Virginia. The iron hissed against the white cotton. She pressed each crease with the kind of care most people reserved for things they owned, not things they borrowed. The uniform belonged to the Langford. Grace just wore it. She was 22, a recent graduate from Howard University with a degree in hospitality management, a 4.0 GPA, and exactly 0 job offers in her field. The economy had tightened. Doors that should have opened stayed shut. So when the Langford, the most prestigious fine dining restaurant in Ashford, offered her a paid internship, she took it without hesitation. It wasn't her dream, but it was a start. Her mother, Denise Sullivan, sat at the kitchen table behind her, reading something on her laptop. She wore a plain gray cardigan and reading glasses. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun. She looked like a school teacher. She looked like someone who clipped coupons and drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, because she did. What she did not look like was the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Denise Sullivan had spent 23 years in federal law enforcement. She had prosecuted arms dealers, Wall Street fraudsters, and a sitting congressman. She held one of the highest-ranking positions in the Department of Justice, and she kept it hidden from nearly everyone in Ashford, including her own daughter. Grace knew her mother worked for the government, something in Washington, something she couldn't talk about. That was enough. Grace never pushed. Denise never offered. It was safer that way, especially now. For the past 18 months, Denise had been leading a sealed federal investigation into Harold Caldwell, the mayor of Ashford. The case was built on wire transfers, shell companies, and construction contracts that existed only on paper. $3.8 million had moved through a network of local businesses, laundered clean, and funneled back into Caldwell's personal accounts. One of those businesses was the Langford. Denise had not told Grace. She had not warned her. She had calculated that the internship would end before the indictment dropped. She had been wrong. Grace hung the uniform on the back of the door and checked her reflection. Clean, pressed, ready. "You look good, baby," Denise said without looking up. "Thanks, Mom." "Busy lunch today?" "Friday, always busy." Grace grabbed her bag. "The mayor's daughter has a standing reservation. She's the worst." Denise's fingers paused on the keyboard, just for a second. Then she kept typing. "Be careful." "I'm always careful." The door closed. Denise sat still for a long moment, staring at the screen. The file open on her laptop read, United States versus Harold J. Caldwell. Sealed indictment. Draft 14. The Langford sat on a corner lot downtown, wrapped in ivy and old money. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, a wine list longer than most novels. The kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than Grace made in a shift. She entered through the back, clocked in, and tied her apron. The kitchen was already loud. The clatter of prep, the bark of the head chef, the sweet sting of shallots hitting hot butter. Theodore Walsh, the general manager, caught her at the service station.
"Sullivan, you're on the main floor today, Section 4.
Grace's stomach dropped. Section 4 was the VIP section, reserved for donors, politicians, and the families who kept the Langfords' name in the society pages. Mr. Walsh, I usually cover Section 2. Not today. Chelsea called in sick. You're up. He walked away before she could respond. Grace straightened her apron, picked up her notepad, and stepped onto the floor. The dining room was already filling. Sunlight poured through tall windows, catching the dust motes that floated above the white tablecloths. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The air smelled of rosemary and seared duck. At the center table of Section 4, a reservation card read, Caldwell, Party of 4, 12 p.m. Grace stared at the name. She took a breath. Then she picked up the water pitcher and began filling glasses. She had no idea that in less than 2 hours, she would be standing in this same spot, covered in soup, fired from her job, and dialing the one number that would tear this city apart. Brittany Caldwell arrived at 12:05, 5 minutes late. She never apologized for being late. She never apologized for anything. She walked through the Langford like she held the deed to the building, which, in a way, her father did. Mayor Harold Caldwell had quietly funneled city renovation grants into the Langford's last 2 remodels. The restaurant owed him. Everyone in it knew that. Brittany was 24, blonde hair blown out to perfection, a Chanel bag that cost more than Grace's semester at Howard. She wore sunglasses indoors and didn't take them off when she sat down. 3 friends followed her, 2 women and a man, all dressed like they'd walked off a catalog shoot. They laughed too loudly and sat without waiting to be seated. Grace saw them from the service station. Her chest tightened. She had served Brittany twice before. The first time, Brittany sent back her steak 3 times and called Grace slow. The second time, she left a 1-cent tip on a $300 bill and wrote on the receipt, "Get a real job." Grace picked up 4 leather-bound menus, straightened her shoulders, and walked to the table. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Langford. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Brittany pulled her sunglasses down just enough to look Grace up and down. "They put you on our section?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll be taking care of you today." Brittany turned to her friend. "Unbelievable. I specifically told them last time." She looked back at Grace. "Where's the other girl, the blonde one?" "Chelsea is off today, but I'm happy to—" "You're happy?" Brittany laughed. "That's cute. You're happy." Her friends joined in. The man at the table didn't even look up from his phone. Grace kept her expression neutral. "Would you like to start with drinks?" "Sparkling water, San Pellegrino. And make sure the glass is clean this time. Last time there was a smudge, and I don't even want to think about whose fingers were on it." Grace nodded and walked away. Her hands were steady. Her jaw was not. She returned with 4 sparkling waters, each glass polished twice. She set them down without a word. Brittany picked hers up, held it to the light, and squinted. "Is this a water spot?" It wasn't. "I can get you a new one." "Forget it. Just take our order before you ruin anything else." Brittany rattled off her order without looking at Grace. Truffle risotto, the lobster bisque, a side of grilled asparagus. Her friends ordered one by one, each more demanding than the last. Substitutions, allergies, temperatures. Grace wrote everything down, repeated it back perfectly, and retreated to the kitchen. The head chef, a stocky man named Patterson, glanced at her ticket. "Section 4? Caldwell?" "Yeah." He shook his head. "Good luck." Grace didn't need luck. She needed patience, and she had spent 22 years learning it from a mother who never raised her voice, never lost control, and never let anyone see her sweat. The appetizers came out flawless. Seared scallops with lemon foam, a charcuterie board arranged like a painting. Grace set each plate down with precision, describing every dish the way she'd been trained. Brittany didn't acknowledge her. Not a nod, not a glance. She talked over Grace like she was a piece of furniture delivering food. One of her friends, a woman in a red dress, looked at Grace and mouthed, "Thank you." It was the only human moment at that table. The entrees followed. Grace carried the tray herself, 4 plates balanced across her arm and hand the way Theodore had taught her during her first week. She served from the left, cleared from the right. Textbook. Brittany cut into her risotto, took 1 bite, and pushed the plate away. "This is disgusting. It tastes like cardboard." "I'm sorry to hear that. Would you like me to have the kitchen prepare a new one?" "Why? So you can mess that up too?" Brittany's voice was rising. Other tables were starting to notice. "Every time I come here, the service gets worse, and I know exactly why." She let the sentence hang. The implication landed like a stone in still water. Grace said nothing. She reached for the plate. "Don't touch it." Brittany pulled the plate back. "I want to speak to your manager." "Of course. I'll get Mr. Walsh." Grace walked to the back. Her pulse was hammering, but her stride was even. She found Theodore Walsh at his desk, reviewing reservations. "Mr. Walsh, Ms. Caldwell is requesting to speak with you." Theodore sighed. Not with frustration at Brittany, but with the tired resignation of a man who had made his peace with cowardice long ago. "What now?" "She's unhappy with the risotto." "The risotto is fine. Patterson's risotto is always fine." He stood up anyway. "Stay here. Let me handle it." Grace waited by the kitchen door. Through the round window, she watched Theodore approach the table. She watched him lean in. She watched him nod. And nod. And nod again. She watched Brittany gesture toward the kitchen, toward Grace, with a look of pure disgust. Theodore walked back. "She wants you to personally bring her a new bowl of the lobster bisque. And she wants you to apologize." "Apologize for what?" "For the overall experience." He paused. "Grace, just do it. Please. Her father has his annual fundraiser here next month. We can't afford to lose that booking." Grace stared at him. For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Not anger, not sadness, but the quiet recognition of a pattern she had seen her entire life. The pattern where power excused cruelty and silence was the price of survival. "I'll bring the soup," she said. She walked to the kitchen. Patterson ladled a fresh bowl of lobster bisque, rich, orange, steaming. Grace set it on a small tray, carried it through the swinging door, and crossed the dining room. Every step felt longer than the last. She reached the table. She set the bowl down gently in front of Brittany. "Your lobster bisque, ma'am, and I apologize for any inconvenience." Brittany looked at the bowl, then she looked at Grace, then she smiled, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with happiness. "You know what? I changed my mind." She pushed back her chair and stood up. She was 3 inches taller than Grace in her heels. "I don't want the soup anymore." She picked up the bowl with both hands. The bisque was still steaming. Grace saw it coming. She saw the shift in Brittany's shoulders, the tightening of her fingers around the porcelain rim, the flicker of something cruel and certain in her eyes. She saw it, and she didn't move. Because where would she go? Who in this room would stop it? Brittany lifted the bowl and poured it over Grace's head. The bisque hit her scalp first, a shock of heat that turned sharp, then searing. It ran down her forehead in thick orange streaks, pooling in her eyebrows, dripping off her chin. It soaked through the collar of her white shirt and spread across her chest like a burn map. The smell of lobster and cream filled her nostrils, mixing with something metallic, her own skin reacting to the heat. Grace stood perfectly still. The empty tray hung at her side. Her fingers had gone white around its edge. The dining room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of a pause between courses, the suffocating silence of 40 people watching something terrible and choosing to do nothing. Brittany set the bowl back on the table. She wiped her hands on her napkin. My father runs this city. Remember that next time you show up to work looking like you belong somewhere else. Someone at a nearby table had their phone raised. The red recording light was on. 3 more phones followed. Within minutes, the video would be on Instagram. Within hours, it would have 2 million views. But right now, in this moment, Grace Sullivan stood alone in a room full of people, soup dripping from her face, and not a single one of them said a word. Theodore Walsh appeared beside her. He put his hand on her elbow, not to comfort her, but to steer her away. Come to the back, Grace. Now. She followed him through the kitchen door. Patterson saw her and dropped his ladle. What the hell happened? Theodore closed his office door behind them. Grace, I'm going to be honest with you. Ms. Caldwell is very upset. Her father is our most important client. I think it's best if we part ways. Effective immediately. Grace stared at him. Soup was still dripping from her chin onto the carpet. You're firing me. I'm ending your internship early. It's not personal. She poured soup on my face. And I'm sorry about that, but this situation has become untenable. I'll mail your final check. He opened the door. Grace walked out through the kitchen, past Patterson, past the prep cooks who wouldn't meet her eyes, and out the back door into the parking lot. The afternoon sun hit her face. The soup had cooled to a sticky film on her skin. Her neck was red and blistering where the hottest liquid had pooled against her collar. She sat on the curb behind the dumpster. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking now, the steadiness finally cracking. She dialed one number. Her mother picked up on the first ring. Mom? Her voice broke. She poured soup on my face, and they fired me. The line was quiet for 3 seconds. When Denise Sullivan spoke, her voice was calm, dangerously calm. The kind of calm that prosecutors use right before they destroy someone on the witness stand. Tell me everything, baby. Every name. Every word. Don't leave anything out. Grace told her everything. Every word Brittany had said. Every look Theodore had given. The soup. The firing. The phones recording while no one moved. Denise listened without interrupting. When Grace finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. Go home, baby. Take a shower. Put aloe on your neck. I'll be there in an hour. Mom, what are you going to... I'll be there in an hour. The call ended. Denise Sullivan set her phone on the desk and closed her eyes. She sat in her office on the 7th floor of the federal courthouse in Richmond, 45 minutes from Ashford, a world away from the woman her daughter thought she was. The office was plain. No photographs on the walls. No nameplate on the door. That was by design. When you prosecuted the people Denise prosecuted, you didn't advertise where you sat. She opened her laptop and pulled up a file she had been building for 18 months. United States versus Harold J. Caldwell. 46 folders, thousands of documents, wire transfers, shell corporations, forged invoices, witness statements from 2 former city contractors who had flipped 6 months ago. The case was airtight. It had been airtight for weeks. But Denise had planned to wait until September, after the midterm primaries, after Caldwell committed to his re-election campaign, after the net was so wide that every associate, every beneficiary, every silent partner was inside it. That plan died the moment her daughter's voice cracked on the phone. Denise picked up her desk phone and dialed the number she knew from memory. Special Agent Rebecca Cole answered on the second ring. Denise, what's up? Move up the timeline on Caldwell. A pause. How far up? Now. I want the warrant signed by Monday, arrests by Wednesday. That's 5 days. We were planning for September. Plans changed. Denise's voice was level, professional, the same voice she used in closing arguments. The evidence is ready. The grand jury has already returned the indictment. We're not cutting corners. We're cutting time. What happened? It doesn't matter what happened. What matters is that Harold Caldwell has been stealing from this city for 6 years, and I'm done waiting. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll call the team. We'll be ready. Denise hung up. She stared at the Caldwell file on her screen. Then she opened a second folder, one she had never planned to use unless she had to. It was labeled The Langford, Financial Records. The Langford was not just a restaurant. It was a laundry. For 3 years, Caldwell had routed city funds through the Langford's renovation budget, ghost invoices for construction work that never happened, catering contracts for events that didn't exist. Theodore Walsh had signed every check. He wasn't an innocent bystander. He was a co-conspirator. And he had just fired Denise's daughter for being assaulted by the family he was helping to rob the city. Denise added the Langford to the warrant list. Then she closed her laptop, picked up her keys, and drove home to put aloe on her daughter's burns. At the apartment, Grace was sitting on the bathroom floor. The shower had washed away the soup, but not the humiliation. Her neck was red and blistered in 2 spots where the bisque had pooled against her collar. She had changed into a sweatshirt. Her uniform was in the trash. Denise knelt beside her and examined the burns. These need proper cream. I'll pick some up. Mom, I'm fine. You're not fine, and you don't have to pretend you are. Grace looked at her mother. What kind of person does that? Who pours soup on someone's face because they don't like the color of their skin? Denise didn't answer, because the answer was simple and ugly, and Grace already knew it. What are you going to do? Grace asked. My job. What does that mean? Denise smoothed Grace's hair. It means you don't have to worry about Brittany Caldwell, or her father, or anyone who thinks power means they can hurt people without consequence. Grace stared at her mother, this quiet woman in a gray cardigan who drove a Honda and clipped coupons. Something in Denise's eyes was different tonight. Not anger, something colder, something precise. Mom, what exactly do you do in Washington? Denise smiled, small, tired, real. I'll tell you everything, soon, I promise. That night, Denise sat at the kitchen table and made 4 more calls. The first was to the FBI field office in Norfolk to confirm the tactical team. The second was to the U.S. Marshals Service to coordinate simultaneous warrants across 3 locations: City Hall, the Langford, and Caldwell's private residence. The third was to her deputy in Richmond to prepare the press briefing. The fourth was to a federal judge, the Honorable Patricia Haynes, who had already signed the sealed indictment 3 weeks ago. Wednesday morning, Your Honor, we're ready. Good. This one's been sitting on my desk too long. Meanwhile, the video had already escaped the dining room. A college student at a nearby table had posted it to TikTok at 12:37 p.m. with the caption, "Mayor's daughter just poured hot soup on a black waitress at the Langford, and nobody did anything." By 6 p.m., it had crossed 1 million views. By midnight, 2.4 million. By Sunday morning, every major platform had a copy: Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook. 3 local news stations ran the clip on their evening broadcast. 2 national outlets picked it up overnight. The comments were a wildfire. Who is this girl? Someone find her. That's Brittany Caldwell. Her dad is the mayor of Ashford. She literally burned that woman. That's assault with a deadly weapon. And the manager fired the victim? What kind of place is this? Boycott the Langford. Shut it down. By Monday, the Langford's Yelp page had dropped from 4.7 stars to 1.2. Protesters gathered outside the front door. 30 people, then 60, then 100. They held signs. Soup is not a weapon, and fire the manager, not the victim. Local business owners pulled their reservations. A catering company canceled a wedding contract. Theodore Walsh locked the front door and closed the blinds. He called Mayor Caldwell's office 6 times. No one called him back. Brittany, meanwhile, did not apologize. She woke up Sunday to 400 notifications, scrolled through them with a yawn, and posted an Instagram story, a photo of her morning latte with the caption, "Some people can't handle the heat," literally. It got 3,000 quote tweets in an hour. None were kind. But Brittany didn't care. She had never faced a consequence in her life. She assumed this would blow over, like everything else. Her father shared that assumption. Mayor Harold Caldwell held a press conference Monday at 10 a.m. He stood behind a podium with the city seal, flanked by 2 aides, and addressed the video like a man swatting a fly. "My daughter is a young woman being targeted by an online mob. This is cancel culture at its worst. The incident at the restaurant was a misunderstanding, and I'm confident the facts will speak for themselves." A reporter raised her hand. "Mayor Caldwell, the video clearly shows your daughter pouring hot liquid on a restaurant employee. Do you consider that a misunderstanding?" "I consider it a private matter between 2 individuals. Next question." Another reporter. "Will your daughter be pressing charges, or will the employee?" "No one is pressing charges. This is a non-story. Next." He walked off the stage. His aide leaned in and whispered, "Sir, the internet is not letting this go. CNN is asking for a statement." Caldwell straightened his tie. "The internet doesn't vote. I do." He climbed into his black sedan and drove to City Hall. He had a budget meeting at noon and a fundraiser to plan for next month. The soup incident was already filed away in his mind under handled. He had no idea that 3 blocks away, in a federal building he had never set foot in, a woman he had never met was stacking 46 folders of evidence against him on a conference table. Denise Sullivan stood at the head of that table, briefing 12 federal agents. Harold Caldwell, 6 years of embezzlement, bribery, and money laundering through city contracts. $3.8 million diverted through 5 shell companies, including the Langford restaurant. We move Wednesday at 6 a.m. Simultaneous entry, City Hall, the Langford, and his residence on Briarwood Lane. She placed a photograph of Caldwell on the whiteboard. He'll lawyer up within the hour. He'll claim political persecution. He'll invoke his office, his record, his family name. None of it will matter. The grand jury already returned the indictment. The evidence is airtight. Agent Cole looked at her. And the restaurant manager, Walsh? Arrested at the same time. He signed the invoices. He knew exactly where the money was going. Cole nodded. Wednesday it is. The room cleared. Denise stayed behind. She looked at the whiteboard, Caldwell's face pinned next to wire transfer records and forged construction contracts. She thought about Grace on the bathroom floor, soup burns on her neck, asking what kind of person does that. She didn't need to answer that question anymore. Wednesday would answer it for her. Wednesday, 6 a.m. The sky over Ashford was still dark. 3 black SUVs rolled down Main Street in formation. No sirens, no lights, just the low hum of engines and the crackle of encrypted radios. At the same moment, 2 unmarked sedans pulled into the parking lot behind the Langford. 4 agents stepped out, federal badges clipped to their belts, warrants folded in their jacket pockets. And 6 blocks south, a third team idled outside a gated colonial on Briarwood Lane, the Caldwell family residence. At exactly 6:02, all 3 teams moved at once. The agents at City Hall entered through the main doors before the security guard had finished his coffee. They walked past the empty reception desk, past the framed portraits of former mayors lining the hallway, and straight to the corner office on the second floor. Harold Caldwell was already there. He arrived early on Wednesdays, budget review days. He was sitting behind his mahogany desk, reading polling numbers on his tablet, when the door opened without a knock. Special Agent Rebecca Cole stepped in first. 2 agents flanked her. Mayor Harold Caldwell? He looked up. His expression shifted from confusion to irritation. Who are you? You can't just walk in here. I have a meeting at Harold James Caldwell. You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. The words hit the room like a detonation. Caldwell's chief of staff, standing in the doorway with a stack of folders, dropped them. Papers scattered across the marble floor. This is insane, Caldwell stood up. His chair rolled back and hit the window. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the mayor of this city. You can't... Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. I will not. I want my lawyer. I want him right now. You'll have access to your attorney after processing. Hands behind your back, sir. Caldwell's face went from red to white. His jaw worked, but no more words came. He turned slowly. The handcuffs clicked. One wrist, then the other. The sound was small. The weight of it was enormous. They walked him out through the front entrance, not the back, not the side door, the front, past the security guard, past the early morning staff arriving with their coffee cups, past a local news van that had been tipped off 20 minutes earlier. The camera was already rolling when Harold Caldwell, mayor of Ashford, Virginia, stepped into the morning light in handcuffs. Across town, Theodore Walsh was having a worse morning. The agents at the Langford found him in his office, reviewing the week's reservations. He saw the badges and immediately began talking. I can explain. Whatever this is about, I can explain. Theodore Allen Walsh, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering and fraud. He did not resist. He did not ask for a lawyer. He simply went pale and nodded, as if some part of him had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. At the Caldwell residence on Briarwood Lane, agents seized 2 laptops, a personal safe, and 14 boxes of financial records from the home office. Brittany Caldwell was standing in the kitchen in her bathrobe when the agents came through the front door. She screamed. Then she grabbed her phone and called her father. The number went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She opened Twitter. The first trending topic in Ashford read, Mayor Caldwell arrested, federal corruption charges. Her phone slipped from her fingers and hit the kitchen tile. The screen cracked but didn't go dark. The headlines stared up at her from the floor. By 8 a.m., Denise Sullivan stood on the steps of the federal courthouse in Richmond. Cameras from 6 networks faced her. Microphones bristled from a forest of outstretched arms. She wore a charcoal suit, no jewelry. Her credentials hung from a lanyard around her neck. United States Department of Justice, Deputy Attorney General. This morning, federal agents arrested Harold James Caldwell, the sitting mayor of Ashford, Virginia, on 23 counts, including embezzlement, bribery, wire fraud, and money laundering. The investigation, conducted over 18 months, revealed a systematic scheme to divert $3.8 million in public funds through fraudulent contracts and shell businesses. She paused. The cameras clicked. Additionally, Theodore Allen Walsh, general manager of the Langford restaurant, has been arrested as a co-conspirator in the laundering operation. Further arrests are possible as the investigation continues. A reporter shouted, Deputy Attorney General Sullivan, are you aware that your daughter was recently involved in an incident at the Langford with Mayor Caldwell's daughter? Denise looked directly into the camera. The investigation into Mayor Caldwell began 14 months before any incident involving my daughter. The evidence speaks for itself. No further questions at this time. She turned and walked back inside. The glass doors closed behind her. In Ashford, the news spread like voltage through a wire. Every television in every diner, every barber shop, every living room showed the same split screen. On the left, Caldwell in handcuffs, being led to a federal vehicle. On the right, Denise Sullivan at the podium. And underneath both images, the same caption on every channel. Deputy AG Denise Sullivan leads prosecution. Daughter assaulted by mayor's daughter days before arrest. At Whitfield Community College, where Grace had gone to use the library's Wi-Fi, a student tapped her on the shoulder. "Hey, is that your mom on CNN?" Grace looked at the screen mounted on the library wall. She saw her mother, her quiet, cardigan-wearing, coupon-clipping mother, standing behind a Department of Justice seal, addressing the nation. Her hand went to her mouth. Her eyes filled. She finally understood what Denise did in Washington. The dominoes fell fast. By noon on Wednesday, the Ashford City Council held an emergency session. The vote was unanimous. Mayor Harold Caldwell was suspended from office, effective immediately. His nameplate was removed from the chamber door before the session adjourned. A janitor carried it out in a cardboard box. The lieutenant governor issued a statement within the hour, appointing an interim mayor and calling for a full audit of all city contracts awarded during Caldwell's tenure. State investigators arrived in Ashford by Thursday morning. The Langford closed its doors at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, not voluntarily. The health department, which had overlooked 3 violations in the past 2 years as a favor to the mayor's office, suddenly found reason to conduct an emergency inspection. They found 2. The fire marshal found a 3rd. Theodore Walsh's liquor license was suspended pending review. By Friday, the restaurant's windows were dark. A handwritten sign taped to the glass read, "Closed until further notice." Someone had spray painted a single word beneath it, "Justice." Brittany Caldwell's world collapsed in layers. First, the social circle. Her 3 closest friends, the same ones who had laughed at the table while soup dripped down Grace's face, stopped returning her calls. One of them, a woman named Sloane, quietly unfollowed her on every platform and blocked her number. No explanation, no goodbye, just silence. Then the memberships. The Ashford Country Club revoked her family's standing. The Junior League sent a formal letter of expulsion. 2 charity boards removed her name from their donor walls. Then the public. The soup video, already viral, now played on a loop beside her father's perp walk on every news channel in the country. The 2 clips became inseparable. The daughter's cruelty and the father's corruption, welded together in the public imagination like cause and effect. Brittany tried damage control. She posted a tearful video on Instagram, sitting on her bed, mascara streaked, voice trembling. "I want to say how truly sorry I am. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was raised better than that. I didn't know who she was, and She stopped. She heard herself. She heard the confession buried in the apology. I didn't know who she was. Not what I did was wrong, but I didn't know her mother was powerful. The internet heard it too. She's not sorry she did it. She's sorry she got caught. She literally said she didn't know who the girl was. That's the whole problem. Imagine thinking the apology is, "I didn't know your mom could destroy my dad." The video was deleted within an hour, but screenshots are forever. On Thursday afternoon, Brittany's lawyer, a man her father had kept on retainer for years, called her with news she hadn't expected. Grace Sullivan has filed a civil suit. Assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, wrongful termination in coordination with the Langford. She's asking for damages. How much? That's not the point, Brittany. The point is that every detail of what happened in that restaurant is now part of the public record. The video, the witnesses, your exact words. Brittany sat in her father's empty study, the same room the FBI had cleared out 2 days earlier. The shelves were bare. The safe was gone. The desk drawers hung open like broken jaws. She called Grace. The phone rang 4 times, then voicemail. Grace, it's Brittany Caldwell. I wanted to say I'm sorry, really sorry. Not because of, I know how it looks, but I'm sorry. Grace never called back. At the apartment on the east side, Grace sat on the couch with her mother. The television was off. The phone was on silent. Denise had taken 3 days off, the first time in 11 years. You could have told me, Grace said quietly, about your job, about Caldwell, about all of it. I know. Why didn't you? Denise looked at her daughter. Because I needed you to be safe, and because the less you knew, the less anyone could use you. Someone used me anyway. Denise nodded. Yes, and I'm sorry I couldn't stop that. Grace leaned against her mother's shoulder. Outside, the evening traffic hummed through the thin walls. A siren wailed somewhere far away and faded. What happens now? Grace asked. Now, Denise said, he goes to trial, and the whole country watches. The trial of Harold James Caldwell began on a Monday in October, 6 weeks after his arrest. The federal courthouse in Richmond was surrounded by news vans from 12 networks, a line of spectators wrapped around the block before dawn. Inside courtroom 3, the gallery was packed. Reporters filled the first 2 rows. Behind them sat city council members, business owners, residents of Ashford who had driven an hour to watch the man who ran their city answer for what he had done with their money. Grace Sullivan sat in the 3rd row. She wore a simple navy dress. Her hands were folded in her lap. The burns on her neck had healed, but faint discoloration remained, a shadow that makeup couldn't quite cover. Denise Sullivan sat at the prosecution table. She wore a black suit, no jewelry. Her case files were arranged in 3 neat stacks. 18 months of evidence, distilled into exhibits, timelines, and witness lists. Across the aisle, Harold Caldwell sat beside his defense attorney, a high-profile litigator named Victor Barnes, who had flown in from Washington. Caldwell wore a navy suit and a red tie. He looked thinner than he had at his press conference. The arrogance was still there, in the set of his jaw, in the way he refused to look at Denise. But it was quieter now. Caged. Barnes opened with the strategy everyone expected. This prosecution is politically motivated. My client is a dedicated public servant who has been targeted by a federal agency with an axe to grind. The timing of this indictment, days after a viral video involving the prosecutor's own daughter, speaks for itself. Denise let him finish. She didn't flinch. She didn't take notes. She just waited. When it was her turn, she stood and faced the jury. 12 citizens, 7 women, 5 men, 3 black, 2 Latino, 7 white. She spoke to all of them the same way. This case is not about a video. It is not about soup. It is not about my daughter. She paused. This case is about $3.8 million that belong to the people of Ashford, Virginia, and one man who decided those dollars belonged to him. She clicked a remote. The first exhibit appeared on the courtroom screen. A wire transfer receipt from the city of Ashford to a company called Ridgepoint Construction, LLC. Ridgepoint Construction was incorporated in Delaware in March of 2020. It has no employees, no office, no equipment, no website. It exists on paper and nowhere else. And yet, over a 3-year period, it received $1.4 million in city contracts for road repairs and building renovations. She clicked again. A second receipt. A third. A fourth. Those roads were never repaired. Those buildings were never renovated. The money flowed from the city treasury to Ridgepoint, from Ridgepoint to a holding company in Virginia Beach, and from that holding company directly into a personal account controlled by Harold Caldwell. She turned to face the defendant. Caldwell stared straight ahead. The scheme didn't stop at construction. The Langford restaurant, a business managed by co-defendant Theodore Walsh, received $2.4 million in city catering and event contracts over the same period. Many of those events never took place. The invoices were fabricated. Mr. Walsh signed them. Mr. Caldwell approved them. Over the next 4 days, Denise called 19 witnesses. A former city comptroller who had flagged the irregular payments and been reassigned to a basement office. A contractor who had been offered $50,000 to submit fake invoices and had recorded the phone call. An FBI forensic accountant who traced every dollar from the city treasury to Caldwell's personal accounts through 6 layers of shell companies. Each witness added another brick to the wall. On day 3, Theodore Walsh took the stand. He had accepted a plea deal, 3 years in exchange for full cooperation. He sat in the witness box with his shoulders hunched, his voice barely above a whisper. Mayor Caldwell approached me in 2019. He said the city needed a partner for certain contracts. He said it was routine. I knew it wasn't. But I needed the money, and I was afraid of what would happen if I said no. Did he threaten you? Denise asked. He didn't have to. Everyone in Ashford knew. You don't say no to Harold Caldwell. On day 5, Caldwell's defense called its final witness, Brittany Caldwell. She walked to the stand in a black dress, no makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked nothing like the woman in the soup video. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Barnes guided her through soft questions, her father's character, his dedication to the city, his love for his family. My father isn't perfect, Brittany said, her voice cracking. But he gave everything to this city. He worked nights and weekends. He missed my birthdays. She stopped. Tears ran down her face. The jury watched. Some looked sympathetic. Most did not. On cross-examination, Denise asked only one question. Ms. Caldwell, were you aware that your father used public funds intended for road repairs to pay for your car, your apartment, and your credit card bills? Brittany's mouth opened. Nothing came out. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 12 minutes. When they filed back in, the foreman, a retired teacher from Henrico County, stood and read the verdict. On count 1, wire fraud, guilty. On count 2, embezzlement of public funds, guilty. On count 3, bribery, guilty. He continued, 23 counts. 23 times the word guilty echoed through courtroom 3. Caldwell gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles went white. Barnes put a hand on his shoulder. Caldwell shrugged it off. In the gallery, Grace Sullivan sat perfectly still. She did not smile. She did not cry. She watched the man whose daughter had poured soup on her face hear the word guilty 23 times. And she felt something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Relief. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Judge Patricia Haynes addressed Caldwell directly. Mr. Caldwell, you were entrusted with the public's money and the public's trust. You violated both, systematically, deliberately, and without remorse. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison and orders restitution of $3.8 million to the city of Ashford. The gavel fell. Caldwell was led out through a side door. He did not look back. That evening, the Ashford City Council held a special session. By unanimous vote, they passed the Ashford Anti-Discrimination and Workplace Protection Act, a sweeping ordinance that mandated bias training for all city-licensed businesses, established a civilian complaint board, and created a fund for victims of workplace harassment. The press nicknamed it the Grace Sullivan Ordinance. The hashtag trended for 3 days. Hashtag Justice for Grace. Hashtag one call changed everything. Hashtag soup girl. But this time, the name carried no mockery, only respect. 6 months after the verdict, Grace Sullivan stood behind a podium at the Virginia State Conference on Workplace Equity. 300 people filled the ballroom: attorneys, advocates, students, journalists. Every seat was taken. She wore a white blouse and dark slacks. No designer labels, just Grace. 6 months ago, I was standing in a restaurant holding a tray. A woman I had never wronged poured hot soup on my face because she didn't like the color of my skin. And then the people who were supposed to protect me fired me for it. The room was silent. I didn't have power that day. I didn't have money. I didn't have a name anyone recognized. All I had was a phone and a mother who picked up on the first ring. She paused. Not everyone has that. And that's why I'm standing here. Grace had turned down 2 job offers, one from a hospitality group in New York, another from the Langford's new ownership. Both generous, both sincere. She said no to both. Instead, she used the settlement from her civil suit to launch a nonprofit called First Ring. The name came from that moment in the parking lot when Denise had answered before the second ring. First Ring provided legal aid, counseling, and career support for workers facing racial harassment on the job. In its first 90 days, it received over 400 intake calls across Virginia. Denise Sullivan had been confirmed as Attorney General of Virginia. The vote was 63 to 31. During her hearing, a senator asked about the Caldwell timing. The investigation began 14 months before my daughter set foot in that restaurant. We moved when the case was ready, not before, not after. The senator had no follow-up. Harold Caldwell was serving 12 years at the Federal Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland. His assets were frozen. His house on Briarwood Lane sold at auction. His portrait was removed from Ashford City Hall. No ceremony, no announcement. Just a bare nail on the wall where a gilded frame used to hang. Theodore Walsh completed a reduced sentence of 22 months and relocated out of state. He never returned to the restaurant industry. Brittany Caldwell was never charged criminally. Virginia classified the soup incident as a misdemeanor. But the civil judgment was substantial. Her social standing was gone. Her family name was a punchline. She took an administrative job in a town 40 minutes outside Ashford, where most people didn't recognize her. 8 months after the trial, a letter arrived at Grace's apartment. No return address. Handwritten on plain white paper. Grace, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I think about what I did every day. Not because I got caught, because I see now what I couldn't see then, that I treated you like you were less than human. I'm trying to be different. I don't know if I'll get there, but I'm trying. BC. Grace read it at her kitchen table. She folded it along the original creases and slid it into the back of her desk drawer. She didn't respond. She didn't throw it away. Some letters don't need an answer. They just need to exist. That evening, Grace drove to her mother's apartment for dinner. Denise had made lemon chicken, Grace's favorite since she was 8. They ate at the same kitchen table where Denise had once read a sealed indictment while Grace ironed her uniform. Mom? Thank you for picking up the phone. Denise squeezed her daughter's hand across the table. Always, baby. Always on the first ring. Outside, the streetlights of Ashford flickered on one by one. Somewhere in the city, a young woman was dialing a number, calling someone she trusted, telling them what happened, hoping someone would listen. And maybe, just maybe, someone would pick up on the first ring. What would you have done if your daughter called you crying, soup still burning her skin? Would you have waited? Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have made that one phone call that changed everything? Tell me in the comments. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and hit subscribe because stories like this need to be told.
23 cows, 12 years, $3.8 million gone, all from one phone call. One mother who picked up on the first ring. Brittany didn't pour the soup because the food was bad. She poured it because she looked at Grace and saw someone who couldn't fight back. No connections, no power, just a black girl in an apron. That's a mistake people like her always make. They confuse quiet with weak. They confuse patient with powerless. Grace didn't scream. She walked to the parking lot and called her mama. And Denise Sullivan, this woman in a gray Cadillac who clipped coupons and drove a Honda, turned out to be the most dangerous person in the city. Not because she wanted revenge, because she'd already built the case. She was just waiting. But here's the thing, not everybody has mother who's a deputy attorney general. So what happens to Grace who gets home to nobody? That's why she built first ring. 400 calls in 90 days. 400 women who needed someone to pick up. So who's pick up for you? And who are you pick up for? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if that was your daughter's? Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe if you are new, because on this channel, soup is never the soup.